Hey, Mama. I am so excited about today's interview because I am interviewing my podcast launch client, Ashlee Sang. We launched Ashlee's podcast, Purpose and Progress, back in February of this year. And since launching her podcast, Ashlee has hit over 1,000 downloads, has interviewed some of the most amazing guests, including the queen of email marketing, Liz Wilcox, and has been consistent with showing up each week for her podcast listeners. Today, I had Ashlee on the show to talk all about brand values and values aligned messaging, which is what she supports her clients with. A lot of times when we hear about building our brand, we think of the visual aspects of branding, like the colors, the fonts, that type of thing. But it's so much more than that. Your brand should communicate your values, your messaging, and the very essence of who you are as a business owner. So that's what I'm chatting with Ashlee about today. We also talk about her podcast because, I love talking all things podcasting. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, Mama. Welcome to the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Singletary, a wife, mama of two, and former virtual assistant turned podcast strategist and producer. This is a podcast for the mama who is burnt out trying to build her business on social media. You're tired of putting in so much time and energy marketing your business on social media, only to hear crickets and barely get any engagement on your posts. You don't have time to waste as a busy mama, and you need an effective way to generate leads for your business. Well, Mama, you're in the right place. On this podcast, I will be giving you the inside scoop on how to create a podcast that generates consistent leads for your business on autopilot, mixed in with some mompreneur hacks and tips for growing your business as a busy mama. So grab your coffee, your notebook and pen, put in those earbuds, and let's dive in. All right, today on the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast, I am sitting down to chat with a very special guest. So I am chatting with Ashlee Sang, and this is super exciting because I worked with Ashlee back in February to help her launch her podcast. So Ashlee, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here. Please tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do, and all about your family.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for helping me birth my podcast out into the world. So yes, I am Ashlee Sang. I run Ashlee Sang Consulting, and I work with conscious and caring business owners, almost always women, especially these days, but not always. But they're always conscious and caring, and they want to have more revenue in their business so that they can feel really, really good about what they're building and the impact they're able to have on the world, on their families, on themselves. And I do that through values-aligned brand messaging and related marketing consulting. But really, the base of everything is, who are you as a brand, as a founder? What do you stand for? How do you want to stand out? And how do you want to make people feel when they interact with your brand? So it's really sort of big picture things that we bring down to earth together. And it's so fun. I'm based in central Illinois. My husband is from Senegal in West Africa. So we definitely still have roots there. And we have a nearly 2-year-old daughter who takes up all my brain and energy and fills my life with so much joy. And what else? I am a podcaster, like you said, and that has become a big part of my business workflow as well.
That's super exciting. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic. So brand values and just creating value aligned messaging. And I think that's so important, especially just a lot of things we're seeing in the online space nowadays, and, people not being as forthcoming and just, especially in the coaching space. So I'm super excited to chat about that. So talk to us about brand values and value aligned messaging. So define that for us and, what are they? Why are they important?
Yeah. So your values are at the heart of it. How? They're your how. They're how you show up in the world, right? So if your audience, your clients, your customers, your peers are the who, then your values are the how that connect those people to your why, to your what you're building, your mission and your vision, right? So your values are how you show up in the world, they're how you make people feel, they're how you become known. So they're a really, really powerful mechanism. And it's something that people feel regardless of how intentional you are around it, right? So whether you take the time to establish what your values are, define what they mean for you and your audience and your business, and then actively apply them, they're going to shine through by default, for better or worse, because it is simply how we show up in the world, right? It is simply how we make business decisions, how we onboard our clients, how we price our offers, how we write our podcast trailer script. Like that is absolutely a reflection. All of those decisions are a reflection of your values. And so, yes, they are simply your how. And the way they align with my framework of values-based, values-driven, values-aligned brand messaging strategy is they are the heart of it. They are the foundation of it. So your brand messaging strategy is the recognizable way you show up in the world. And so that is your voice and your personality. It is your elevator pitch. It is your tagline. It is your email subject lines. Your messaging is simply how you connect everything that's in your head and heart with anyone who interacts with your brand, whether it is team members or clients or peers, collaborators, it doesn't matter. Your brand messaging is that foundation of everything. And so the values are the foundation of that foundation, at least in the way I approach brand messaging.
That's really good. And I love how you broke that down, but to like dive into it a little bit deeper. So what actually goes into this? Like, how do we actually create our values aligned messaging?
Yeah. So when I do my Messages That Matter VIP day, that is my sort of cornerstone main way to work with me. And that is a co-created one-on-one values aligned brand messaging strategy. When we create these guides together, I always include 6 components. And whether you're contracting this out, whether you're doing this on your own, you could absolutely use these 6 components. So I start with a brand statement, which is essentially an elevator pitch. It's essentially a boilerplate copy. It's really, who are you as a brand? What are you working toward in this world? Who are you for? Why does it matter? It's really those big picture questions, and the brand statement answers that. So that's component 1. The second component is that mission statement. So if you have ever worked in corporate America, or I know you come from early childhood, I'm sure your preschools had some sort of mission statement somewhere. Most of us, if we create a business plan, it says create a mission statement. And it can probably feel pretty far removed, or it can feel a little bit corporate-y, or it can feel like 10 iterations ago of where you actually are in your business. So the way I do mission statements is meant to feel at least a little bit more fresh. It's really meant to be that like, why am I showing up and doing this all day, every day? Why am I taking time away from my family? Why am I not just getting a job and clocking in and clocking out and getting paid, right? Like it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. So our mission is our why. It's why we continue to show up in the world and in our business. So that's component 2. Component 3 are those values. And it's really important for me to tease out those 3 to 5 core ideas of how my client likes to show up in the world, what they want to be known for, how they want to make all of their decisions in their business, and not only place a word to that. Often simplicity comes up. Many of my podcast guests have come up with the idea of courage as one of their core values. And what's really special is, yes, we establish what those core values are, but then we define them. We really, really, really take the time to figure out, what does simplicity mean to me in my business? What does courage look like for how I show up in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So that is component 3. Component 4 is, of course, your audience, the people you are trying to reach. You do not have a business if you do not have people on the receiving end of it. You are showing up to serve them. You are creating offers for them. You're creating pricing for them, right? So who are these people? What makes them tick? That is component 4. Component 5 is your voice, your brand voice. So how do you sound? Of course, your tone can change, whether you're owning up to a mistake or whether you are celebrating a big milestone, your tone might change, but your voice is the same. Do you use curse words? Do you not? I have one past client. She's one of my favorite examples because she wanted to be known as a college residential advisor. And so you could really instantly picture like that relationship that she would have with her clients, right? She wanted to be just a step ahead of them, but still a peer. She also wanted to be self-deprecating, but only if it made a point, always from a place of confidence. Her brand voice was just so, so clear. And that one was really, really fun to create. So your voice is, how you sound no matter the situation, right? So I am a very enthusiastic, slightly cerebral, but also very casual kind of person. That is my voice. And that's how I write. That's how I interview. That's how I talk to my clients on a sales call. And with all of these elements, we want them to be as consistent as possible so that whether someone is reading a social caption or on a sales call with you or hearing you on a podcast interview or in one of your workshops or working with you one-on-one, it feels the same, right? Because it's really, really jarring if you think you signed up for one type of person or one type of brand and you get some other experience, right? So that consistency is really, really important. And then those are the first 5 elements. The 6th and final element of a values-aligned brand messaging guide is those core messages. So that's the marketing speak. Those are the little blurbs that you can smush together and pull apart and copy and paste and use as the base of a blog post or a podcast episode. They can be used as a tagline or a headline. They can be used really as inspiration or as is. And it's a really, really consistent, strong base to be able to pull from and never have to start from a blank page. So that's one of my favorite, most actionable parts of the guide.
I love that entire framework. A couple of things that stood out to me. So with the mission statement, I love that you come at it from a different angle because, like you said, a lot of times people think of corporate mission statements and they're always just so bland and boring. So I love that you approach it differently. But also, too, I love the fact that you help your clients create this cohesiveness. And I think that's really huge in your messaging because people consume content in different ways. And so whether they're listening to a podcast or reading your email, it needs to still have that same clear messaging so that way people can associate that with your brand. So I love that is your approach. That is amazing.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier said than done, right? But that's why you have a guide to be able to gut check yourself, to be able to point any contractors you have in the right direction, right? So even if you hire the best copywriter in the entire world or the best VA or the best social media manager or the best podcast manager, it doesn't matter who you're hiring. It's so useful to have something to point them to so that they know what they're working toward and working from too. So whether, again, you're solopreneur, company of one, culture of one, or whether you have a team around you, it's really, really useful, again, to just not be looking at that blank cursor every single time you need to hop on a call, write something new, or anything in between.
That is so true. You kind of touched on this, but can you give us like more examples of actually living out your brand values?
Yeah. So, for example, exploration is one of my core values. So I drive like sort of like systems minded people a little bit crazy because I'm constantly wanting to try new offers or try new positioning of whatever offers I currently have. Or it's just really important for me. And my entrepreneurial spirit and just my brain to not feel boxed in, to feel like I have some flexibility to explore new ideas, different points of view. Like exploration for me also shows up in the types of communities I'm in. I don't want to be in echo chambers. I want to come from into spaces where people have all different points of view and lived experiences. And that colors the way they view the world and the way they do business. And maybe I can learn something, or maybe I can change their mind, or vice versa. So exploration for me, determines the types of communities I'm in. It determines the way I do my content, the way I design my offers, all kinds of different things. Whereas, again, I've had many, many clients, and simplicity we have drawn out that simplicity is one of their core values. And so for them, that might mean really doubling down on processes. That might mean having a 9 grid on Instagram, right? Versus trying to keep up with the feed. It might mean so many different things. And what's so cool about living out your values is it permeates your entire business. So both those forward-facing marketing elements, like how often you email, what you email about, who you email to, but also the big operational decisions like, do I attend this conference or not? How do I price this offer? Do I have payment plans or not? That sort of thing, all is a reflection of your values. So one of the things I do with clients is hash out how these values manifest, because sometimes the easy part is establishing and defining, and the hard part is all the creative ways to align those values so that everything feels as good as possible, and again, does as much good as possible too, for themselves and for anyone that they're coming in contact with as well. So that application phase is really important and very overlooked too. Sometimes we just live in the self-reflection zone and we never bridge the gap into the action zone.
That's really good. And I love that you share that, because a lot of times you'll see, especially like if you're working with different coaches and whatnot, they will try to push you to do things a certain way and not really consider what your actual values are and how you operate and everything. And so that's amazing that you support your clients with not just figuring out what those values are, but how to actually apply them effectively in their business. Because there's no one way to do things. Something that works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. And that's okay. It's just really figuring out the best way to apply it to your business, so that way you're still hitting your goals and whatnot, but you're doing it in a way that feels aligned and feels good to you. So that's really amazing. Like, I feel like I'm learning more about you and what you do, even though I know we took like a deep dive when we were mapping out your podcast and everything, but I love that you provide that type of support. It's so needed.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's so hard to do for ourselves, whether it's brand messaging, whether it's auditing where our values show up, whether it's even figuring out what the heck we care so much about and what we want to stand for. We're so close to it. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for outside perspective. Whether you're hiring out, I hired a launch strategist for my podcast. People hire me for their brand messaging strategy. Or whether it is a business bestie, a mastermind, a free community, a paid community, like wherever you can get some feedback and reflection back, because we live and breathe our thoughts and our ideals and our hopes and dreams all day, every day, right? And so we're just so close to it. Sometimes we can't tell, oh my gosh, we are so onto something. This is amazing. This is gold. We need to go full force ahead. Or sometimes we can't see those little holes that are going to become giant, giant problems if we don't have someone point them out to us, right? So that outside perspective is everything. And then also you were saying, you were talking about like consistency, and you were talking about really feeling good about your decisions. And people can tell. People can really, really tell when you're trying to force yourself into someone else's methodology, business box, when you're trying to do the quote unquote best practices because you think you should, with air quotes around it. People can feel that. Even if not initially, eventually, the more they get to know you, the more they get to know the real you, the things you actually care about, the more they're going to see this is not aligned. And that loses trust really quickly, right? Because people do business with real people. I'm a huge proponent of human first business. Doesn't matter if you're B2B, B2C, anything in between. There is absolutely a human on the other side of that buying decision, regardless. So having that consistency and that values alignment from the get-go builds that loyalty, builds that trust, differentiates you from all the other people who do exactly what you do, more or less, right? It just makes it better for everyone all around.
Yes, I agree 100%. So you kind of like given us like an idea of like what it's like to work with you one-on-one, but like, okay, say I'm gonna book a VIP day with you. What does that look like? What does it entail?
Okay. Well, first, I get so excited because this is such a personal process, right? So it's always such a privilege to go along this journey with someone. But the nuts and bolts of it are a pre-questionnaire because we write differently than we speak, almost always. Even if we're like amazing writers who have a really strong voice, we just write differently than we speak sometimes. So I really like to give that time and space to capture those ideas on your own time. Maybe it's at 2 a.m. because that's when you do your best thinking, or maybe it's, an hour before our call because you need that time pressure, like whatever works for you, the client. You get all those thoughts onto paper. And the pre-questionnaire talks around your brand. It doesn't, ask, what are your values? What is your mission? If you knew that, you wouldn't be hiring me, right? So then we hop on a call. It's about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, depending on how chatty mostly the client is. I do a lot of listening and a lot of question asking. So we hop on this live call face to face, and we go through the questionnaire, and I ask, what do you mean by this? Or you share a story, and almost inevitably, my clients will say, uh-oh, I'm starting to ramble. And that's when I know we're getting to something good. That's when I know they have a lot of juicy experience and thoughts and emotions around whatever we're talking about. So we unpack that. I take pages and pages and pages of notes, really capturing, again, everything that's in their head and heart. And then they're free to go about their day, have a spa day, take care of their kiddos, do day-to-day business, whatever they need to do. And I then create their brand messaging guide. And it's absolutely co-created because I am filtering all of those notes that came directly from their mouth or directly from their fingertips that they typed out. And I am siphoning all of this information into those 6 elements that we talked about. So everything from that brand statement down to those core messages. And then I was doing it at the end of the day, but mostly because of baby girl, I've actually been doing it the next morning to do a wrap-up call. So we do this big reveal, and I sometimes have tears from my clients, tears of joy, never fear, but tears of joy from my clients. We maybe tweak here or there if need be, especially around the values. Like one little word here, especially in the definition point or part of it. We go through use cases. All right, so here's this big juicy guide. It is a working Google Doc. It's not a beautifully designed deck like a visual graphic designer would probably provide. It is a living, breathing Google Doc that you can mark up, comment, send to contractors, send to teammates. I recommend that you like either cross out or gray out or have some sort of color coded system for the core messages. Once you use them in a piece of content or on a web page, mark it so that you know where it lives, or that you don't repeat yourself over and over necessarily, unless that's intentional. And so, yeah, we go through the guide. We make sure that you know how to use it. We make sure everything sits well with you. It really feels right. And then we have a baked in empathetic accountability call, which is basically one of my open-ended consulting calls to walk through anything that's come up. Oh, you know what? I was trying to tackle my about page and I was trying to use the guide and I really was having trouble. Or, oh, I'm feeling so good about the guide. I would love to brainstorm content ideas or anything in between. It's completely open-ended and it is meant to really start that implementation train, because a strategy is only as good as it is implemented. So I really don't want it to just die on your hard drive. I want the guide to see the light of day, see all, and have the world hear all the beautiful messages that your brand has to share. So that is what the VIP day looks like. And then I have continued momentum after that if the timing is right and if the relationship is right.
That's an amazing service. And I know many, many business owners need that, because I feel like messaging, that's sometimes the hardest thing to really get down. So to have that guide to refer to, that's incredible. Because like you said, it can be applied to so many different things, so many different ways we create content and everything. So that's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. I love the offer. It's so fun. And it was a very organic build, like many of our offers, right? We sort of learn things here or there. We see what people need, and then the magic happens the more we do it.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about your podcast. Tell us, why did you start it and how are you incorporating your brand values into it?
Yeah. So the podcast is called Purpose and Progress Podcast. And so those two words in and of themselves hold a lot of meaning, and hopefully are open enough for interpretation for the listener to be able to apply purpose and progress in whatever ways they need or want to in their life and in their business. And it's all about values sparking action. And so I bring on guests for all but the first episode of the month. I do a solo episode, the first episode of the month, but all the others are guests, amazing women entrepreneurs I know who share advice and anecdotes about their business journey, about their point of view in the world. And the whole point is for me to have a way to shine a light on all these amazing women I have met over the years. I have a founder friends section in my newsletter that is my favorite part to write, because I just get to shout out all the wonderful things that are going on in the world from other people that I have met. But the podcast is a long form way to do that. And so it's a way for the listener also to not feel so alone in their entrepreneurial journey. They're able to see themselves, even if they have completely different experiences, completely different business models, maybe even completely different values. They're able to feel validated in their own journey by listening to someone else's. They might also pick up some tips along the way for how to, do something a little bit technical, or for how to overcome burnout or something, whatever comes up organically in the conversation. And it's so fun because I ask the exact same questions to every single guest, and every conversation is wildly different. And we'll definitely have to share your episode. That
Yes.
was such a fun conversation. And the podcast is really meant to be this generous vehicle, both for the guests and the listeners, and a creative outlet for myself. And hopefully it aligns with my business trajectory as well, too, right? Surrounding myself with these types of women, hopefully my clients see themselves in those women, right? Or collaborators see themselves in those women. Hopefully people like my point of view or like whatever tips I'm able to share in the solo episodes and want to work with me, right? So it's strategic, but in a very, very generous way.
Yeah, I definitely, now that I've been a guest on your show and everything, and I can see it honestly being like how it is when someone books a VIP day with you. It's very therapeutic, and the questions you ask, it really, you have to stop and think and like, well, how do I really feel about that? Or what are my views on this and everything? So it's an amazing setup that you've done. And I love what you've done with your podcast, and it aligns perfectly with your business. Now that I've really gotten to know you and your business and what it is that you do, like it complements your business so well.
Well, thank you so much, especially from a podcast strategist who's sort of been on the inside and the outside and everywhere in between. I super appreciate that.
No problem. All right. Well, as we wrap up, one question I always ask my mom guests are, what is your number one mompreneur hack?
Oh boy. I think it is the constant reminder that this is just a phase. And actually trying to enjoy the time now, rather than wishing it away. And yeah, I think being more at peace with my mom life makes me be able to compartmentalize a little bit better, show up better in my business life, and really try to appreciate, all right, yes, I have to carry baby girl every single place I go ever, and my arms are going to fall off, but someday she won't even want me to hold her at all. So really just taking that step back and enjoying where we are now, and both in life and in business.
I love that. Yeah, that's one thing I like to remind my guests, that it's just a season of life. And so, and I love that you take the perspective of, okay, let me enjoy this, because at some point she's not going to want that anymore, So really enjoying those moments and everything. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And thanks for all you do for fellow mamas. It is the hardest and most wonderful job.
No problem. But before we get off, please share with my audience how they can connect with you and learn more about your services.
Yeah, so you can find me at Ashlee Sang Consulting on Instagram, at Ashlee Sang on LinkedIn. But probably the best way to really get a peek into my brain is to download a free version of A Visionary's Guide to Elevator Pitches. So this is, again, that brand statement. It's how you introduce what you do and why it matters. And I have a bunch of resources built into it if you want to dive deeper. And it's really meant to be a working exercise. So you are able to download that for free at ashleesang.com/mompreneur.
All right. And all of that will be linked in the show notes. Well, thank you again, Ashlee, for everything and just sharing your wisdom and insight into values aligned messaging.
Yeah. Thank you so, so much.
No problem. Mama, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. Whether you're a podcaster ready to create podcast content that attracts her dream clients, or a mama that's ready to stop the social media burnout and simplify her marketing through podcasting, I can support you. Head on over to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/connect to submit an interest form so we can chat about how I can best support you. All right, Mama, I will talk to you again soon.